Defense News. It's proudly sponsored by Navy Federal Credit Union. If you're a member of our nation's armed forces, the Department of Defense, or if your family is, we'd be proud to serve you too.
Improvise, adapt, and find some berries? See how the Marine Corps is teaching devil dogs to forage. Hint, it's about a lot more than gathering mushrooms in the woods. Plus, President Joe Biden will award Medals of Honor to 3 soldiers. Learn about the heroic actions that earned them the nation's highest commendation. And later, the Pentagon's mission on the U.S. border with Mexico has been marred by drugs and discipline issues. There have even been several soldier deaths. The inside scoop on how the border mission went south. And we wrap up the show with a look at the history of the Army-Navy football game, an event that had gotten so violent the president had to step in. With the latest news and analysis from the Pentagon to the platoon, this is Defense News Weekly. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. I'm Andrea Scott. We have a great show for you this week. Marines are known for being resourceful, but the Corps is taking it one step further, picturing a future where the force might be stranded on a Pacific island, or simply wanting to fight without relying on vulnerable supply lines. The Marines are now teaching classes at the basic school in foraging. But this isn't gathering nuts and berries in the woods. It's procuring everything from jet fuel to racks of ribs and everything in between. Marine Corps Times' Philip Athey checked out the training.
Once you get down to the spot,
what should we be doing for the squad competition?
We're here today in Quantico, Virginia at the Basic School, where new Marine Corps lieutenants are learning how to forage. The foraging classes have been added to the school's curriculum as the Marine Corps prepares for a potential future war, specifically in the Pacific Islands. For platoons in that environment, being able to get their own food and water from the economy makes them harder to spot and less reliant on long logistic lines. This is just one part of the foraging effort by the Marine Corps. On the enlisted side, Marines are learning how to forage for all kinds of things in addition to food and water, including fuel.
All right, good afternoon, Marine.
Sergeant.
All right. My name is Staff Sergeant.
Major, thank you for joining us today. Can you tell us a little bit about this course?
Yeah, absolutely. So when the Commandant released Force Design 2030, he talked about expeditionary advanced basing operations. And a part of that is being sustainable. So what we're teaching the lieutenants, or the students rather, here at the basic school is how to sustain their force for longer periods of time. What that means is resourcing local sources, I guess, to find food, to find water, to sustain their force. This isn't about like hunting, or this isn't about surviving. This is about keeping their force going longer without the need for a resupply.
So is this about, buying from wherever that base is, just going out into the local community, buying whatever they need to supply it instead of the long supply chains?
Yeah, absolutely. Whether it be buying from a local farmer or going down to a local market, that's where they're going to be sourcing these types of.
So kind of what is the practical example of this? Is this, a lieutenant with their platoon on an EABO and for whatever reason they're running out of food? What is kind of, they're taking this from here out into the fleet?
We're not concerned about them running out of food per se. We're confident in the Marine Corps' ability to resupply, and confident in their ability to do logistics, and they're working improvements on that from a different angle. But what we want them to be able to do is extend their forces, extend their capability, remain a fighting capable unit for even longer.
We're gonna take our knife and we're gonna go at an angle and stay as close to that bone as you can.
The reality is not all Marines grew up hunting or grew up on the plains of the western part of the United States or wherever. What you have is Marines that come from all different walks of life. So we got to ensure that these Marines have a basic understanding on how do you take a whole animal, break it down, butcher it, and then consume it. And once your comfortability with that grows, I think possibilities are endless.
And what's the importance of foraging, whether it's for food or fuel, for Marines downrange?
So, great question. We're trying to reduce the amount of logistics necessary to operate. And that sounds like a great buzzword in practice, but in reality, when you are in that challenging situation, whether it's in a combat zone or combat operations or nearing a start, you have to be comfortable with, can you go into the local marketplace, whether it's a local town or village, procure a reasonable amount of supplies from that local community, whether that be fuel or food, and consume that to support your operations. There is an equal amount of reduction in logistics by doing that. You no longer have to pull from all the way in the continental United States and bring those supplies at great expense all the way to into your operating area.
So it's about lowering prices and kind of getting rid of that long, potentially risky logistics line. Is there also an element of it of, kind of lowering the signature? I know that's a big thing with the EABO concept, is making it harder to spot these Marines.
Absolutely.
How does that play into this?
Absolutely. If we can reduce the signature of logistics, which is a very loud, heavy, cumbersome process, then you enable the maneuver force. I use this analogy often with our Marines, that if you have logisticians that are on the battlefield supporting a maneuver force, let's say an infantry battalion, and they are not covered and concealed, they are not reducing their signature, then you undo all the effort that maneuver force is doing. All the cami paints, the cami netting, all the operating at night, that's all for naught if your logistics is loud and screaming in on these large trucks. And some of that's unavoidable, but the reality is that there is much we can do in tradecraft, just in logistics, in our logistics MOSs, that once we do that, we now reduce the risk. We start buying down risk by training.
Is there anything that you learned today, or that you kind of really connected to you?
Actually, it is, because one thing that I had never even considered is we got a brief last week from General Zinni, who told us about how his platoon over in Vietnam specifically lived on the land, and that's something that never even came into mind, because as far as field exercises go, when we're away from civilization, we always pack out the food that we're going to eat with us. I've never had to worry about where my next meal is going to come, but that's where the updated strategy is going into. It's like we're going to be sent into these different locations where we may potentially not know where our next meal is coming from. And so it provides a whole new perspective in terms of survivability out when you're away from your element.
I learned a lot today. I literally didn't know anything before we got here, so it's definitely been a learning process. I didn't realize that you'd be going through the farmers to get the meat. I thought maybe we'd have to go hunt down a pig or something in the woods.
As you can see, the Marines are finishing up their foraging class and will soon be eating the food that they just butchered. For Military Times, this is Phil Bathy.
Those skills will be useful in all the world's hotspots. When we return, we see just how the Pentagon's mission on our southern border turned to chaos.
The military and defense market is constantly evolving. Stay on top of the latest news with Sightline Media Group's live events. Continue to learn, understand new tools and technologies.
We're live. You're on in 3.
Defense, government, and industry leaders come together for successful and proven engaging events. You'll gain valuable insight, get the chance to ask questions, all from the comfort of your own home or office. Sign up for our events newsletters and receive alerts for upcoming live streams.
In 2018, President Donald Trump directed the Pentagon to augment Customs and Border Protection's mission on the U.S. border with Mexico. Some of those troops have since spoken out to Army Times. Daniel Woolfolk has more.
The Pentagon's mission along the country's southern border has been marred by a lot of problems. A lot of those have been recently uncovered by an Army Times investigation led by Davis Winke. Davis joins us now. Davis, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
What kind of problems have we been seeing along the border with National Guard troops?
Well, where do we even begin with this one? Overall, our investigation uncovered that the ground task force that led the mission from October 2020 through the end of the fiscal year was just marred by issues with equipment, issues with manning and organization, and most importantly, huge issues with soldier misconduct.
And what's the problem there? Are they getting bored? Is there not a lot going on? Is there not a lot of oversight?
Well, one of the issues with the current mission at the southwest border is even though it's National Guard troops there, they're in a Title 10 duty status, which means they're under the command and control of the Pentagon and are severely limited legally in what they can do. That has left most of them with little more than watching cameras or sitting out lookout posts as a mission, in addition to some here and there logistical support capabilities for the Border Patrol. And a lot of these lookout sites just don't see a ton of migrants. And even when they do, these soldiers can't do much more than pick up their radios and call the Border Patrol. And so they'll be sitting there manning these posts 24 hours a day. And for months, they didn't even have night vision goggles. And when you put that in with the fact that they've got a lot of money, they're staying in remote areas at hotels with little to do, and they're not allowed to bring in visitors without prior approval, it's something of a recipe for disaster sometimes.
One really interesting part of your story was something that happened in Texas at a Whataburger. If you want to get really Texan, there is a soldier from the National Guard unit in a Customs and Border Protection vehicle, went to a Whataburger and bought a kilo of cocaine.
Yeah, what happened with this junior enlisted soldier from Alabama is kind of emblematic of a lot of the issues that the mission faced. A lot of these troops had these reckless attitudes towards their work and what they were doing. And we saw massive problems with drug and alcohol abuse crop up as a result. And, late into the mission, this one soldier felt so emboldened that he went in uniform, driving a marked Border Patrol vehicle, and tried to get a kilo of cocaine from undercover investigators from Homeland Security investigations. It's something that you just can't make up, Daniel.
Is this mission having any impact for our national security?
That's always a tough question to ask. The premise behind a mission like this is that by surging National Guard manpower to the border, that hypothetically frees up Border Patrol agents who would be stuck doing the things these National Guard troops are now doing, such as sitting in lookout posts, watching camera banks, or, in one case, even shoveling horse manure and calling it vehicle maintenance. The idea is that every Border Patrol agent freed up is a plus for border enforcement. But the lookout sites, for example, only accounted for a little less than 15% of the total apprehensions at the border over fiscal 2021. And it really raises questions about, the efficiency of this use of the National Guard.
This is a mission that was initiated by the past president, President Trump, and President Biden currently has it. What's the future of it?
That's an open question at this point. So the Pentagon has authorized up to 3,000 troops, which is 1,000 fewer than fiscal 2021. We're going to see up to 3,000 troops at the border through October of 2022. But the mission's fate after that is up in the air. Previously, the Government Accountability Office had faulted the Pentagon and the Department of Homeland Security for failing to establish a shared vision of what the exit strategy is here. Is there a plan to, get DHS off of this support from the DoD? That's not clear. It's not clear whether this mission is going to continue into 2023 or not. And, now people on Capitol Hill and people in immigration focused think tanks are taking a harder look at the issue, partially thanks to our reporting.
And you'll be covering it every step of the way, I'm sure. Davis, thank you for joining us.
We'll do our best. Thanks, Daniel.
You can read Davis Winke's story on ArmyTimes.com. When we return, we hear from personal finance expert Jeanette Mack as she gives us tips for buying a car at the end of the year. On this edition of Money Minute, Navy Federal Credit Union personal finance expert Jeanette Mack gives us tips for buying a car at the end of the year.
Does your holiday shopping include buying a new car? If it does, you're in luck. The end of the year is actually one of the best times to buy a car. According to TrueCar, buyers who purchased a car on New Year's Eve saved an average of 8.3% off the MSRP. It's basically a buyer's market from November to December, so you'll have the upper hand at the dealership. Most dealers are putting their cars up for sale with deeper discounts so they can move their inventory and make room for more. That could mean major savings for you. And since dealers put their new cars out in the fall, by the end of the year, you'll have the most variety of new cars to choose from. The more cars there are means you have the luxury of finding the best one for you and your budget. So do your research, spend time online looking at pricing and options, and head to the dealership armed with information and your pre-approval. At that point, you're in control of the negotiations, and the process is much smoother and faster. Make sure you cash in on any active duty or veteran discounts they offer as well. Combine that with fewer buyers in the market, holiday discounts, and MSRP savings, your new car could be the best gift you give yourself all year.
Thanks, Jeanette. We'll see you next week. To get more of our coverage, be sure to check out our headlines online at Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marine Corps Times.com and DefenseNews.com. And to get a list of our top stories in your inbox every weekday, subscribe to our Early Bird Brief. And make sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Do you like live content? If so, subscribe to our Military Times YouTube, where we bring you exclusive coverage and we bring it live. The live chat is only open to subscribers, so make sure to hit that follow button. And when we return, what should have been the original inspiration for concussion protocols, the early Army-Navy football games.
Our hearts are overflowing with gratitude today as we honor the unparalleled courage and commitment to duty and the indisputable gallantry.
The White House presenting a service member with Medal of Honor is a rare event, but recently President Joe Biden awarded 3 of the medals at a very unusual ceremony honoring soldiers whose battlefield valor had been overlooked for years. The 3 soldiers were Army Sergeant First Class Alwyn Cash, Sergeant First Class Christopher Sellers, and Master Sergeant Earl Plumley. Both Cash and Sellers were honored posthumously. Plumley survived his heroic actions and was present at the ceremony to receive his medal. All 3 men had previously been awarded other medals for heroism, but outside groups have lobbied for years to have the awards upgraded to better reflect their bravery and sacrifice. In the case of Cash, it's been a 16-year-long fight by his family and friends to get him recognized with the Medal of Honor. He was serving with the Army in Iraq in 2005 when the Bradley fighting vehicle he was traveling in was struck by a roadside bomb. Cash was thrown free of the vehicle, but 6 of his fellow soldiers and an interpreter were still trapped inside. He dodged gunfire to run back into the burning wreckage again and again and again, pulling all of the bodies out, despite suffering 2nd and 3rd degree burns that ultimately led to his death.
Alwyn Cash was a soldier's soldier, a warrior who literally walked through fire for his troops.
Sellers was an Army Ranger who died after a firefight with Taliban militants in Afghanistan in July 2018. He repeatedly put himself between enemy fighters and Allied troops during an evacuation operation and ordered a helicopter to leave him behind despite mortal injuries to ensure that other troops could get to safety.
Sergeant Solis used his body as a shield for the aircraft and his crew against the heavy incoming fire. The helicopter began to take off and he put himself directly between the cockpit and the enemy, ensuring the aircraft could depart and sustaining what would prove to be a mortal wound. In the face of extreme danger, he placed the safety of his team and his crew above his own.
Plumley is an Army Green Beret who similarly held off an advancing enemy attack at a forward operating base in Afghanistan. After 10 insurgents impersonating Afghan National Army personnel breached a perimeter wall, Plumlee rushed in to stop them from advancing further, braving gunfire and bomb blasts in an effort to protect his fellow soldiers and foreign allies.
While the driver of their truck maneuvered into the line of enemy fire to shield injured members of their team outside the vehicle, the staff sergeant exited the vehicle and used his own body to shield the driver.
All of the medal upgrades have been rumored for months, and family members of the three men described the final White House decision as bringing a mix of relief, pride, and sadness to them. Including Plumlee and Sellers, only 20 service members have received the Medal of Honor for actions in Afghanistan. Cash is only the 7th person to receive the honor for actions in Iraq, and he's the first African American to receive the recognition for heroism in the recent wars. For Military Times, I'm Leo Shane.
In the early days of inter-service football games, the helmets were thin, the pads were for show, and the animosity was deep. The games got so violent and heated, they almost once led to a duel. With the most recent Army-Navy game still in the rearview mirror, HistoryNet's Claire Barrett tells us about when things got so out of hand, the president eventually had to step in.
Dateline, Philadelphia, any year. In a moment, the story.
The Army-Navy game is in its 131st year, but thanks to President Grover Cleveland and a few traumatic brain injuries, it hasn't run consecutively. First played on the Plain at West Point on November 29, 1890, the game set the tone for the rivalry, with both teams meting out heavy punishment. Navy's captain, Red Emmerich, was knocked unconscious twice during the game, but continued to play on, while Army quarterback Kirby Walker was also unconscious twice and had to be carried off the field. From there, the intensity of the rivalry grew, coming to a head during the 1893 game. After the achingly low score of 6-4, the stands erupted in several bloody melees. To make matters worse, an incident between a rear admiral and a brigadier general nearly led to a duel after the Navy victory. At this point, President Grover Cleveland stepped in and banned the contest indefinitely, and for the next 5 years, the rivalry was diffused. However, in 1897, Secretary of the Navy, Theodore Roosevelt, deftly sought to bring back the match. In a letter to the Secretary of War, Russell Alger, under President William McKinley, Roosevelt wrote, "I should very much like to revive the football games between Annapolis and West Point." Roosevelt outlined that if the authorities of both institutions agreed to take measures to prevent any excesses such as betting and the like, and to prevent any manifestations of an improper character, if, as I say, all this were done, and it certainly could be done without difficulty, then I don't see why it wouldn't be a good thing to have a game this year. Alger and McKinley concurred, and the series resumed in 1899. World War I would interrupt the rivalry twice. The games were suspended in 1917 and 1918, but during World War II, the game interrupted the war. In 1944, after number 1 ranked Army beat number 2 ranked Navy 23-7, the Army coach received a telegram from the Pacific. The greatest of all Army teams, stop. We have stopped the war to celebrate your magnificent success. It was simply signed MacArthur. So this year, give thanks to the man in the arena, and if you're Army, make sure you at least grab the right goat this time.
And that's all we have time for this week. Please visit us on militarytimes.com and defensenews.com for more coverage. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.